Although it cost him everything, the $6 million guy is now worth $15 million. To become the biggest celebrity on TV, he damaged bones, smashed automobiles, and leaped off buildings. In the background, his body was disintegrating. In 2003, his heart almost killed him. For his best buddy, his wife Farrah Fawcett, left him. And every week, medical professionals had to remove fluid from his knees. However, he's accomplishing something no one anticipated at the age of 86. Majors is continuing filming stunts for a new science fiction picture, whereas other performers his age have retired. Looking at him today would stun you. Before he ever breathed in 1939, Lee Majors was born into heartbreak. 5 months before to his birth, his father perished in an accident at a steel plant. While working as a nurse, his mother attempted to raise him alone during the most trying years of post-Depression America. On her way to work, however, Lee was struck and murdered by an intoxicated motorist when she was just 17 months old. He was moved to Kentucky after being adopted by his uncle and aunt, after becoming an orphan as a newborn. Lee was unaware of any of this for years. He believed that his adopted parents were his biological parents. However, he discovered old newspaper articles detailing the passing of his biological parents one rainy afternoon when he was a teenager, and rummaging through their attic, everything changed at that instant. He didn't spiral. He committed to himself. He made a vow that his adopted parents would never regret bringing him in. His desire with achievement was fueled by that promise. He put all his emotion into sports at Middlesbrough High School. He became a local celebrity and was so good at football that the school named their field after him years later. College scouts were drawn to his desire and quickness. He also received a football scholarship to Indiana University in 1957. However, things took a turn for the worst after only 2 years. He was expelled after getting into a heated argument with a fraternity member. He lost everything because of that one error. His future in major college football and his scholarship. He didn't give up though. To give it another shot, he transferred to Eastern Kentucky University. However, catastrophe struck in his very first game. He was immobilized from the waist down for 2 weeks due to a back injury. Physicians were terrified. Lee was afraid of the end. However, he finally recovered completely and resumed walking and running. The NFL scouts who previously viewed him as a budding talent had to go, even though his football career was permanently finished. Lee shifted to acting after giving up football. While completing his degree, he began performing in minor plays at a Danville theater. By 1962, he was holding his graduation and faced with a decision. He might pursue his dreams or educate. After deciding on the dream, he relocated to Los Angeles. He accepted a position as a park recreation director in North Hollywood in order to support himself. His life then took yet another drastic shift. He got to know Dick Clayton, a well-known agent who used to represent James Dean. Lee was in his first movie within a year after Clayton spotted something in him and enrolled him in acting courses. It was only a brief flashback, but it was the beginning. In the midst of all of this, his personal life was subtly disintegrating. In 1962, he had a son named Lee Jr. after getting married young. However, the strain of moving to a new place, having little money, and not knowing what the future held became too much. After a while, his wife abandoned him and returned to Kentucky with their son. He told himself it was better that way, even if it broke his heart. His son was at least surrounded by relatives, but the ache persisted. He never forgot that time at the airport when he saw his kid go too young to realize that he might not return. Harvey Lee Yeary made the decision at this point that he needed a name that fit if he wanted to succeed in Hollywood. In remembrance of his football idol Johnny Majors, he added Majors after dropping Harvey and keeping Lee. Being a celebrity was not the only goal. It served as a means of clinging to the one quality that had made him unique before taking action. Then again, fate intervened. He encountered Rock Hudson, who recognized the young man with the movie star appearance and had visited Kentucky before. As promised, Hudson assisted Lee in establishing himself in Hollywood. he found him an agent, Dick Clayton, who had previously served as James Dean's mentor. Before he left for Hollywood with his wife and child, he organized study sessions at MGM, acting courses, and even helped him gain confidence. Majors even had a chance because of Hudson's unobtrusive assistance, which most people were unaware of at the time. Everything moved quickly once he was cast as Heath Barclay in The Big Valley. The admirers and the fame arrived, but regrettably so did the ego. Initially seasoned Hollywood icon Barbara Stanwyck attempted to help him. However, Majors didn't always behave with elegance since he was still raw and a bit too self-assured. There was a specific instance that caused actual harm. He made fun of a set extra. She was Sherry Smothers, the sister of the well-known Smothers brothers, without realizing it. Stanwyck did not remain silent. She reminded him what it meant to become famous and called him out in front of everyone. She was standing up for the professionalism and respect that the business required, not just for someone. Their conflict escalated into disputes about authority, respect, and money. Majors eventually had to issue an apology, but the damage had already been done. Like Hudson, Stanwyck had offered to mentor him, but he had missed the opportunity. Majors received a significant opportunity at about the same time, the main role in Midnight Cowboy. He was supposed to portray Joe Buck, a lost soul attempting to make it through New York City. The large valley was revitalized, yet it may have changed everything for him. The opportunity was gone in an instant. Instead, Jon Voight was cast in the part, earning him a spot in movie history and an Oscar nomination. It's odd to consider how a single choice, contract, or scheduling conflict may completely change a career. Had Majors accepted that position, how different his legacy may be, who knows? Nevertheless, he pressed on. He featured in the pioneering television film The Ballad of Andy Crocker, 1969, which told the story of a Vietnam soldier who returns to a society that has moved on without him. It was unadulterated feeling, not only pretending. When his character returned home, they discovered loss, treachery, and a sense of alienation. With an unexpected ensemble that included Jimmy Dean and Marvin Gaye, Majors gave a more profound performance than fans had before witnessed. It demonstrated his variety and talent beyond simply looking nice on camera, but it was a daring story to present in 1969, when the war was still going on. As the years passed, Majors and Stanwyck had an unexpected development. As time went on and the flames subsided, the stress eventually gave way to thankfulness. Early on, Stanwyck had recognized something in him. She cared, which is why she had been tough. Majors had to earn it the hard way, but other players in the large valley maintained strong relations with her. And he did. Eventually, he referred to her as his best friend and mentor. It was a subdued acknowledgement that he had matured, and that he now understood what she had been teaching him at the time. The Virginian was more than simply a role when Lee Majors joined the team in 1970. For a dying program, it was a new beginning. With a dramatic new look that mainly referenced spaghetti westerns, the series was relaunched as The Men from Shiloh. Majors' portrayal of Roy Tate was a perfect fit for this grim new vision. Everything was different. The theme song, which was now written by the renowned Ennio Morricone, as well as the sets and costumes. Viewers paid attention. A show that had been declining was suddenly back in the top 20 after ratings skyrocketed. Even yet, the 9th season ended up being its final one. The show was a victim of the notorious Rural Purge, a network decision that eliminated numerous primetime shows with a country theme, despite the chic makeover. Majors wasn't left in the dark immediately after. He launched himself into a new series. Owen Marshall, a legal counselor. Majors portrayed Jess Brandon, the younger partner of Arthur Hill's more seasoned lawyer in the courtroom drama. Since his name had previously increased ratings, the network brought him in the hopes that his celebrity would draw viewers. However, that wasn't precisely Majors' ideal role. He didn't like neckties or courtrooms. He missed movement, the great outdoors, and action. He once made a joke about how the only exercise he got was moving back and forth in a courthouse set. The show did, however, have some highlights. Prominent visitors included John Travolta, Martin Sheen, and even a youthful Mark Hamill. Behind the scenes, the show also turned out to be quite important in his personal life. Farrah Fawcett, his future wife, was arranged by Majors to show up on a couple of episodes. The $6 million man, however, made the offer that could have made all the difference. He nearly rejected the concept when it initially came to him in 1973. The script made the project's initial title, Cyborg, sound overly corny. He found the idea of a superhuman man performing acrobatics every 5 minutes to be too reminiscent of the campy Batman television series from the 1960s, and he had no desire to participate in such a performance. He was uncomfortable even after he consented to star in the first TV film. Dusty Springfield even sang a theme song in one of the versions. Majors detested such atmosphere. He put a lot of effort into giving the character a more realistic and genuine feel. There was no murder or bloodshed, just a strong guy acting morally. Producers eventually paid attention. The tone of the program became somber, and Majors contributed to making it something that viewers could relate to. The $6 million man's debut was a process rather than a single event. In terms of ratings, the first film, which debuted in March 1973, dominated the competition. Later that year, 2 further films with a more James Bond flair were produced as a result of that unexpected popularity. However, the tone changed once more when it became a weekly series in 1974. The program leaned into Majors' concept under the new leadership. More gritty, less glamorous. He portrayed a hesitant hero in the role of Steve Austin, someone who did what he had to do, even if he disliked violence and espionage. The audience adored it. The fact that Majors was still doing Owen Marshall in addition to starring in the $6 million guy added to the intensity of the situation. He was hosting 2 network shows simultaneously for a spell, which was practically unheard of. ABC didn't want to lose the momentum of the Bionic Man plot, but they also didn't want to let him go from the courtroom drama. As a result, they devised an insane schedule in which Majors would frequently record scenes for both programs on the same day while hopping between sound stages like a man with actual bionic legs. To keep up, he even spent some time living on the studio property. That double task was short-lived. Eventually, David Soul took his position on Owen Marshall, but Majors was exhausted by the event. Nevertheless, it demonstrated how much the network trusted him, and he validated them. The pressure, the risk, and the never-ending hours all contributed to Lee Majors' rise to fame. Being the franchise's face wasn't enough for Lee Majors behind the scenes. He made the decision to give directing a go in 1975. He chose an episode that combined espionage with football, and he even invited genuine NFL players, such as Dick Butkus and Larry Sanka, to appear as guest actors. The action in the episode appeared chaotic and dirty due to the uneven, overgrown fields on which it was recorded. There were conflicting reviews. Some referred to it as the most bizarre episode, while others said it was among the greatest. However, Majors demonstrated that he was capable of more than simply acting. Then came 1977. Majors refused to go on set, despite the fact that the program was still popular. Although it wasn't, everyone assumed it was about money. He was battling for a greater cause. He planned to name his production firm after Farrah Fawcett, his ex-wife, to participate in the activity. That infuriated Universal, so they sued him. The industry was rocked by the litigation. Majors ultimately achieved his goal, but the altercation could have negatively impacted the presentation. Ratings declined. The end was near. TV history was altered by what transpired next. Lee Majors was sick of seeing only guys in action sequences. He questioned the creators about why there was never a romance plot for his character. Lindsay Wagner's character Jaime Summers was created in response to the query. Viewers adored her even though she was supposed to perish after only 2 episodes. They were unable to release her. Thus, the authors devised a twist. She was only getting better. She didn't die. It was from that twist that the Bionic Woman was born. Surprisingly, her show outperformed the $6 million man in terms of ratings. Wagner even made history by being the first sci-fi actor to win an Emmy. But anxiety accompanied triumph. Despite playing a strong couple on TV, Majors and Wagner hardly communicated off-screen. Why? Pay. Despite having her own successful program, Wagner's earnings were far lower than Major's. Later she said that the difference was enormous, at almost $60,000. She didn't have much authority to stop it back then. Additionally, the two-series separation was finalized when the Bionic Woman switched networks. Crossovers and collaborations ceased to exist. Majors and Wagner didn't start getting along again until years later, long after both programs had stopped. When Lee Majors saw the photo of Farrah Fawcett in his agent's office, he was already a rising celebrity. It was her first time in Hollywood, young, attractive, and totally unheard of. Majors contacted the girl's boarding home where she was staying, and boldly left a message saying he would pick her up at 8 o'clock without ever meeting her. Despite her opinion that he was impolite, Farrah agreed. Almost little was said during their uncomfortable first date, and Farrah became ill after drinking too much. However, Lee gave her 13 yellow flowers the following day. That made all the difference. They were more than simply lovers, they turned become the talk of the town. They were at the top of the globe by the middle of the 1970s. Farrah had become a household name with Charlie's Angels, and Lee was the face of the $6 million guy. Her image appeared on posters all over the world, and her haircut was imitated everywhere. However, the fissures were already beginning to appear behind the glitz. They hardly ever saw one another as their jobs took them in various ways. They never had time to establish a family, despite their immense renown. Then everything went apart in 1979. Lee requested his longtime buddy Ryan O'Neal to see how Farrah was doing while he was filming in Canada. Everything changed with that one request. Farrah and Ryan become too close. What began as a mutually beneficial kindness evolved into a romance without Lee. He was devastated to learn about it. He went up to Ryan and pleaded with him to go away, but Ryan refused. "I truly adore her," Ryan remarked. In an instant, a friendship was ruined. Lee made an effort to remain composed. He made a call to Ryan's home. He ended the call. He gave another call. Upon eventually connecting, he instructed Ryan to keep his distance. However, it was too late. Farrah had already strayed from Lee's life and into Ryan's. Nevertheless, Lee and Farrah continued to talk on the phone daily, despite their failing marriage. In addition to heartache, there was an odd type of allegiance that persisted. The attention and the quiet at home depleted Lee during their separation. He put in grueling hours at work, attempting to maintain his job while Farrah was away seeking new roles and a new romantic partner. Later, Lee acknowledged that they had barely spent 2 weeks together in a single year. Their marriage was destroyed by more than simply the infidelity. It has to do with time, pressure, and distance. But behind all the pain, there was something more, something gentler. They quarreled over their enormous home. When it came time to share things after the divorce, the judge was prepared to make a decision. Lee, however, made a silent decision. He handed it to her, just handed it away without a struggle or any terms. He said outside the restaurant, where they had supper that evening, "She's a nice lady, and I love her very much." He didn't carry resentment with him. It was affection. Lee Majors wasn't your typical tough man on TV. He played the role. He wasn't only playing a stuntman when he played Colt Seavers in The Fall Guy. He was one. Lee continued to challenge his physique, despite his already well-known role as Steve Austin in The $6 Million Man. He performed the majority of his own stunts, because he desired realism. This included being slung around like a rag doll, wrecking vehicles and leaping from roofs. However, such hits were not ignored throughout the years. His knees were in excruciating discomfort by the time he reached his 60s. Each week, his doctor had to remove fluid from them. He even made a joke about it being like having his oil changed. The toll was real, even though it was humorous. He was in too much pain to even enjoy a simple horseback ride or a round of golf. The actual show was unique. There was more to The Fall Guy than stunts. It told the story of a man who made his living in Hollywood by chasing crooks at night and working as a stuntman during the day. Colt Lee's character applied the same techniques he employed on film sets to the streets. It was now a matter of life or death. The show included a combination of humor and action, and Lee himself sang the theme song. Even covert digs regarding his relationship with Farrah Fawcett were included, who had previously been his true love, but there was terrible effort behind all that enjoyment. The show's vehicles were strengthened to withstand the mistreatment. Lee, however, was not in that position. The cost was borne by his body. He had changed by the 1986 finale of the series. He had to reconsider everything. Because of the ongoing suffering, he was unable to continue playing parts that taxed his physical limits. He occasionally wished he were the Bionic Man, faster, stronger, and painless. However, Lee wasn't composed of wires and steel. He was made of flesh and blood, and each wound accumulated over time. The fans had not forgotten him, though. He returned to the cinema in 1987 as Steve Austin in The Bionic Lady and the $6 Million Guy. With the return of the original cast and the appearance of Lee's real-life kid, it was a huge success. As a fresh agent, 2 additional films were produced as a result of that one hit, one of which provided fans with the moment they had been waiting for years. In the end, Steve Austin wed Jaime Summers, without requiring the risky stunts that had damaged Lee's joints. These reunion films provided him a second chance at a successful career. Lee's real life was equally as dramatic as the events depicted on TV. He met Karen Velez in 1984, a model who recently became a centerfold for Playboy. They fell in love quickly and had a daughter, Nikki. Shortly after, they had twin boys, Trey and Dane, by 1990. It appeared steady for a time. To spend more time with his children, Lee even took a break from performing, but the tranquility was short-lived. In 1994, the marriage came to an end, silently, without the commotion of the tabloids that had surrounded his breakup with Farrah Fawcett. For the children, they maintained order this time. However, it marked the end of yet another chapter in his personal life. Life throws another curveball just as everything appeared to be getting back to normal. Lee had to deal with a failing heart in 2003, something from which even the $6 Million Man was unable to escape. What started off as a routine checkup became a nightmare. Serious obstructions were discovered by doctors. He required open heart surgery. He started to bleed out during the procedure, and medical professionals had to act quickly to save his life. Faith, his new wife, supported him through it all. Lee's life altered once he survived the incident. His new normal included eating healthier, working out frequently, and moving more slowly. Faith was more than a caregiver. He had been looking for love, and she was it. They first crossed paths in 1995, began dating, and were married on the Italian shore in 2002. The wedding was difficult to organize. Delays in paperwork nearly caused it to be canceled, but they managed to make it happen. They even reaffirmed their vows in Hawaii in 2008. Lee joked that their lengthy marriage was a record by 2019. Hollywood. He finally met someone who stood by him after everything he had been through, including shattered marriages, broken bones, and an almost broken heart. His children were raised in a different world. Lee the Sicking, his eldest son, pursued acting after him. Nikki, his daughter, briefly dabbled in Hollywood, before settling on a modest life in real estate and motherhood. The twins pursued their own interests, including music, into shaping surfboards. Although none of them pursued acting as a career, they all possessed some of their father's audacity. In particular, Trey loved adventure, exploring the world and hand-building surfboards in San Diego. Lee Majors didn't have a booming second act in Hollywood. It was shrewd. He discreetly returned to the forefront with a fresh idea, after years of being seen as the quintessential tough man. He didn't pursue prominent opportunities. Rather, he chose the appropriate times. He shocked everyone in 2005, when he appeared on Will and Grace, as a refined figure enmeshed in the chaotic turmoil of the program. It was more than just amusing. It demonstrated his capacity for more than just action. On Cold Case, he played a troubled ex-military guy with secrets in 2007, flipping the script once more. That would not die. It was praised by critics. Jim claims that he joined the next year. All of a sudden, he was viewed as more humorous, easygoing and human than before. He and Jim Belushi clicked behind the scenes and developed a genuine connection that lasted beyond the program. However, Ash vs. Evil Dead, which ran from 2016 to 2018, was the true tipping point. He wasn't only acting when he played Brock Williams, he was around 80 years old, and performing his own stunts. The younger actors marveled at him as they learned from a legend who never slowed down. Lee Majors made a surprising comeback by 2024. One thing had fans talking when Ryan Gosling participated in the Fall Guy reboot: Majors' unexpected appearance. It was more than simply a throwback. It became into a full-fledged affair. He placed a casual wager with director David Leitch over the location of his sequence prior to production. It would land in the third act, Majors was certain. Leitch disagreed. On set it became a common joke, and Majors would even interrupt editing sessions to promote his version. However, this was no mere walk-on. He had a 12-page history for his character ready, and he revised some of the lines that made the final edit. Majors put in more work than most performers half his age, according to Gosling, who couldn't stop complimenting him. Farrah Fawcett was the one aspect of Majors' life that continued to torment him in spite of all of his accomplishments. They were once one of the most successful couples in Hollywood, but distance, time, and celebrity had altered everything. Majors eventually opened up following Farrah's death in 2009. She wasn't the same girl he had married, he said. Both her fame and their separation had altered her. He cared even though he kept quiet in private and in public. Unbeknownst to the media, he paid her 3 hospital visits. Throughout her treatment, he gave her flowers once a week, always signed Lee. 2 weeks before to her death, they had their final conversation. Just over 20 minutes passed during that last phone conversation. However, it provided them with the necessary closure after years of silence. Majors is still not content to be forgotten. He is 86 years old and starring in 2037, a new sci-fi thriller that will be released in July 2025. He portrays a rebellious military leader, attempting to prevent an extraterrestrial invasion of Earth. The movie had a large concept, but was made on a little budget, primarily in Houston. It also includes a starring part for the director's 5-year-old daughter, and one of Tom Sizemore's last appearances. The Majors didn't simply do things. In addition to being a stuntman, he was also an executive producer and mentor. He insisted on doing things the old-fashioned way, refusing to use computer effects. The initiative is a bridge between generations, according to the director. Majors were at the heart of it all, demonstrating once more that true stars never go out of style. They change with time.